Hey guys, what is going on? Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today taking a slight break from NFL draft stuff. We will have more Fallout videos from the NFL draft, but this is a video about two guys the New York Jets should sign as soon as possible. And in a way, it's kind of connected to the NFL draft because the Jets didn't really do enough at either of these positions for me to feel comfortable, but there is a fallback option, which is these two veterans that the Jets could and probably will sign if I had to predict. So the first is someone that was with the Jets last year in 2022, one of my under the radar guys, someone I really liked a lot on this roster last year, Quan Alexander. He was a linebacker on this team for the New York Jets. They brought him in on a one-year deal, and I think you should do the same thing because he's sitting there right now with really not that much of a market, kind of like Connor McGovern didn't really have that much of a market. You could say the same about Quan Alexander, who played 49% of the Jets snaps last year, and he started 12 games. He played in all 17. Now, again, the Jets really like Quincy Williams. He is going to be the starter next to CJ Mosley. But Quan Alexander as your linebacker 3 is pretty solid because right now it's Jamie Sherwood, who I thought was okay when he had to fill in for CJ Mosley a little bit when Mosley got banged up. But in a limited sample size last year, Sherwood was okay. But we know the ceiling of Quan, and when you're going for a championship and when you are trying to be a competitive football team, you need as much depth as humanly possible. And at this point, again, I don't think Quan Alexander is going to be all that costly. He had 47 tackles last year. He knows the system well. He's played in the system well. He flies around the field, makes plays down by the line of scrimmage. He knows Robert Saleh, knows the expectation. I think that one just makes way too much sense. And again, he doesn't really have much of a market. They waited on linebacker. They grabbed one late on day 3. But to me, that's more of a special teams ad. I don't really think you could expect him to come in and be linebacker 3 from day 1. So bringing back a guy like Quan Alexander to round out your defense, to me, makes a ton of sense. And the second guy on this list should also be an obvious one, and that's Al Woods. The Jets did not add on the interior of the defensive line. In the first round, they added on edge, but interior defensive line was a position that, I think the Jets still could obviously look to add at. And the people that they have brought in and the guys that are currently on the roster who play on the interior are really more of your prototypical pass rushers from the interior. Quinnen does both, obviously, but everyone else isn't really that role. Like Solomon Thomas isn't great against the run. They bring in Jefferson, who is kind of the same thing. He's a pass rusher, which is more of your Sheldon Rankins replacement. And there's thoughts about moving JFM inside, Michael Clemens inside, but due to their size and, maybe you could do that on third down when you're trying to just go all out, get home as a pass rushing unit, that's fine. But on early downs, you need someone who can clog up the middle of that defense and kind of just, get after it and stop the run. And someone who makes almost too much sense is Al Woods, who is still sitting there. 36 years old. Yes, he's up there in age, but still a productive player. He played in 14 games last year. He had 2 sacks, but again, that's not really his role. 21 stops, 5 tackles for a loss. Someone who could come in and play the run. The Jets don't have that guy right now on the interior of this defensive line. They have pass rushers who can get home. Unless you count Quinnen Williams, who does both. But beyond that, really kind of just pass rushing specialists from the interior. And yes, I know that how important it is for this defensive line to get home. They rush 4, and that's the goal, and that's what they do, and that's their identity. Of course, not denying any of those things, but it's a legitimate fear about this defense if they don't add someone who can come in and play against the run up the middle, that they could end up getting gashed, and that's not ideal. Again, we talked about trying to be competitive and being a potential Super Bowl contender and bringing back Quan for depth. Same thing with Al Woods. I'm not saying either of these two guys are going to be Pro Bowlers or, all pros or anything like that, but much needed depth. You need as much depth as humanly possible. They just completed the NFL draft this past weekend, and looking at the state of the roster and, where things stand as of today, those are a couple spots where I still think the Jets can improve. And a couple of cheap veterans, absolutely still likely. We saw them add Dwayne Brown late last year. They added Quan Alexander late last year. They added Morgan Moses late. They've done this before. Joe Douglas has waited and added guys and gotten pretty good value out of some guys later in free agency. So let me know your thoughts down below. Should the Jets add these two players? Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Matt O'Leary. I'll catch you next time.